What is up, everybody? Sam Dog, the infamous 253, coming at you guys with my roundtable buddy from the AZ Sports Fans Roundtables from the NFC West. One of my roundtable buddies, Mr. Steezy A Smith, in the building. A collaboration long overdue for Seahawks Talk. Steezy, how you doing?
Man, I'm feeling blessed. I'm feeling good. Ready to talk Seahawks football with you, bro.
Yeah, man. Week 2, the home opener, our preview for Seahawks taking on the Tennessee Titans, who are coming off of a big-time loss at home against the Arizona Cardinals in their home opener, where they suffered 5 Chandler Jones sacks. Well, 6 sacks in total. 5 of them included Chandler Jones, and they limited Derrick Henry to just 58 yards. Now, we know the first key of this one is how much are the Seahawks and their run defense going to be able to contain Derrick Henry, because they did a pretty damn good job last week against Hines and freaking Jonathan Taylor when taking on the Indianapolis Colts. Held him out of the end zone for most part of that game. So run defense comes first, but another concern is going to be the cornerbacks going into this game with Arizona's receiver core of Julio Jones and A.J. Brown and Reynolds, the former Ram, too. But where does it all start first? I say the first it starts off with containing Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you, bro. As you saw, the Cardinals were able to shut down Henry in the running game, and the Titans, they need that because that's how they play off of that when it comes to their play action game, their passing game. They use those big plays that are created by the running game. And so if the running game isn't working, play action isn't working. They can't take deep shots down the field. You know, if the box isn't loaded, or if the box is loaded, then the receivers can't take advantage of it because the receivers don't even have the necessary chemistry with Ryan Tannehill, as was illustrated by Julio Jones and his, I don't want to say terrible performance, but it was a lackluster performance, to say the least. What was it, like 2 to 3 catches, 4 catches on 6 targets? It just didn't look like they were in sync. And so you take away the run game, you're going to take away a little bit from the receiving game as well, from the pass game.
Yeah, Julio Jones did not have a very normal Julio Jones-like game. He got limited targets, and I know A.J. Brown had like the only touchdown. They just didn't get the 2-point conversion after, which explains the 13 points that they had, and Tannehill had the only rushing touchdown. Now, another thing to look out for, too, is we also know that you can't give Ryan Tannehill much room to run either, because Ryan Tannehill is a tough runner, too, kind of like Josh Allen. Of course, he's been doing it longer than Josh Allen. He's physical, and he will take contact and try to bulldoze you to try to get those extra yards for first downs too. So limiting Ryan Tannehill will be huge too. And I hope Carlos Dunlap can really get after him too, much like Chandler Jones. I'm not going to say he's going to have like 5 sacks, but if we can at least get a few sacks on Tannehill, maybe 3 or 4, just get enough pressure on him and make him make mistakes, that's going to be huge too.
No doubt. I mean, you saw how the Titans offensive line played against the Cardinals pass rush. It wasn't just Chandler Jones. Other guys were getting in terms of being able to get after the quarterback, in terms of getting after the quarterback by sending pressure. They didn't have to blitz all that often, yet they were still able to gain pressure just, with their 4-man fronts. And so it looks like their offensive line is in shambles. Their offensive line isn't nearly as good as it has been in years past. And with our new defensive line, with all the depth that the Seahawks feature, Darrell Taylor, he looked spectacular last week. Who was it? Rasheem Green had a sack. Enson Mayowa had a sack. And so, yeah, exactly. And so Ryan Tannehill is going to be in a lot of trouble. I don't even think he's going to have the time necessary to look down the field to his receivers if his offensive line can't hold up in pass protection.
Yeah, and then, I'll tell you what, Rasheem Green had a beast game last week when he batted the pass. He got 1 sack on Carson Wentz. I'm really hoping that he can have a repeat performance this week against the Titans. Another thing we got to really get after, and I was quite surprised with the way that the offense was putting up big yards and the points that they put up against the Titans defense. I was just thinking, I wasn't expecting that last week. Is Tennessee's defense really going to be that bad? I know they added Bud Dupree to their pass rush in the offseason. I was just shocked. And it's like, is their defense really going to be that bad this year? And that's where we have to really take major advantage of the running game with Chris Carson, and no Rashad Penny. He's on IR. Unleash Chris Carson, unleash DJ Dallas and Alex Collins. I don't know how much we're going to use Alex Collins in the run game, but this is going to be one game where we got to unleash it. And then cornerbacks, obviously we know they're going to double team DK Metcalf. The Colts made the same mistake, which would really open it up for Tyler Lockett. So I'm expecting another big game from Tyler Lockett this Sunday too, going off against the secondary. Granted, they still have Kevin Byard, who's one of the other good cornerbacks in this league too. So I expect that one-on-one matchup to be Byard on Metcalf. But usually we all know how big mistakes it is going one-on-one. I mean, we saw him burn guys like Darius Slay. Still got to figure out Jalen Ramsey later on this season too. But if we can get Metcalf some balls and have him have a big game, that would be huge. But they want to double team him up. You cannot leave Lockett that wide open. So Lockett might have another big time performance like he did last week against Arizona if they decide to double team Metcalf. So, man, that's one of my big things is just seeing for myself if that secondary or if that defense is as bad as it really looked, and it will be a struggle for them this season. So not taking them lightly though.
No, of course. I mean, honestly, I'm not super surprised. Last year the Tennessee Titans finished second to last, I think, if not outright last in the NFL in sacks. And they just had one of the worst defenses in football. They made a few additions in the offseason, obviously, like you mentioned, Bud Dupree, Danico Autry. They drafted Caleb Farley. I still think he's still coming into his own. And so that defense has a lot of work to do. I think if Seattle, I don't know if Tennessee's going to double team DK just because we all saw what Tyler Lockett did last week. We all know what Gerald Everett is capable of. Obviously, Chris Carson is also a threat. And so for them to double team either one of the guys, I think it's going to have to come down to pick your poison. Who do you want to get beat by, DK or Tyler? Maybe, you take turns. And so I don't know if double team is going to be in their best interest. But as far as their defense, like you said, that defense just really isn't that good. And so if Seattle's able to put up points in a hurry, if Seattle's able to put up points, in an explosive and quick manner and an efficient manner, I think that Tennessee's going to have a hard time climbing back. As we all know, they're a run-first football team. Yep. And if they fall, into like a 7-0, 14-0 early lead, or like if they're down by 14-0, 7-0, something like that, they're going to be unable to run the football. If they're going to be unable to run the football, then that's not going to open up their pass, and they're going to struggle the rest of the game, just like they did against the Cardinals last week.
Yeah, I mean, we all know that offense in Tennessee is a Derrick Henry ran first, but my biggest concern, though, going into this game now, obviously, and it's been noticed, the secondary for the Seahawks, the cornerbacks. We saw them get beat quite a bit. They left Paris Campbell wide open on a play last week, and then Zach Pascal had 2 touchdowns. Well, the second one, Flowers really had no support over the top for the second touchdown. But now another thing is this. Now the only difference is this time we're going against A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. How much man coverage will we see on those receivers? Because I expect to see, I don't want to see them playing like 5 yards off or 10 yards off their guys like they did on a couple of those plays to like the big play where we gave up the big chunk play to Paris Campbell. That's my big concern. That's my biggest concern is our cornerbacks going up against Jones and Brown and, of course, former Ram Josh Reynolds.
I wouldn't be too concerned. I mean, like I said, Ron Tannehill doesn't yet have that chemistry with Julio, and then you have their head coach throwing Julio Jones under the bus. I don't know how he's going to respond to that, but he is a great football player, and he has been in the National Football League for a while now, so I'm pretty sure he'd respond well. But like I said, the chemistry just isn't there. It's going to take time for them to really establish that. I'm not at all concerned about our secondary and how they can perform against the Titans, just because I know that as long as we're able to shut down Derrick Henry, we could focus on their pass game. We could focus on the weapons. We could focus on A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. Who knows? Maybe he truly has lost a step. Maybe he just isn't as explosive, as great, as gifted as he once was. He is getting older, 32, going on 33. Yeah. And offensive line won't be able to protect Ron Tannehill. So like I said, they're going to have a hard time throwing deep shots down the field. That's where Julio excels. A.J. Brown also excels there. And so I'm not going to be super worried about that. I mean, like I said, we are going to be able to contain Derrick Henry fairly well. And so we can devote some more of our attention towards the guys on the outside. But obviously that remains to be seen.
So here's another question I want to ask. Who's going to abuse Taylor Lewan this week? Dunlap? Is it going to be Dunlap and Jamal? Possibly, if Jamal goes in on those safety blitzes, because we hardly threw in Jamal on some blitzes last week. Granted, he just had a little bit too early of a jump earlier in that game, which took away a sack that he would have had on Carson Wentz with that offsides, just barely timed to run. And we all know how bad Lewan got abused by Chandler Jones last week. So who gets to do the honor this time if we were? And like I said, I'm not sleeping because we know this could go completely different from what we're talking about, but this is how we hope we're going to get it done. Do you expect Carlos Dunlap to have that one-on-one?
Honestly, I think just like we did last week, it's going to be by committee. I'd rather see it by committee. Darrell Taylor, if there's a guy I'd want to see one-on-one, it's going to be Darrell Taylor. I mean, he looks like he has that juice, and he looks like he has the explosiveness that we would want from a future pass rusher. And he was getting the job done last week against right tackle Braden Smith of the Indianapolis Colts. I'd love to see him one-on-one with Taylor Lewan, Carlos Dunlap, Rasheem Green. Brian Monet, who we haven't even talked about yet, he had a phenomenal game last week. Benson Mayowa, Kerry Hyder Jr. didn't even get into the sack party. And so I want to see a mixture and a combination of these guys getting after the quarterback, going after different matchups, having different situations, one-on-ones and whatnot. But Darryl Taylor is probably going to be the guy that I'm looking at towards when it comes to, one-on-one I want to see.
Yeah, Darryl Taylor was giving me flashbacks of when we had Frank Clark earlier back in 2015. Darryl Taylor gave me those Frank Clark vibes again. So I would love to see. And I remember that when he had that fourth down stop, he beasted. Who was the O lineman that he beasted before he?
Braden Smith.
Yeah, he beasted Smith and Wentz on the same play. I want to see him beast whoever he's going to do. And this time I want to see him get a few more sacks too. And then Kerry Hyder, as you mentioned, also, Hyder had a really nice stop to prevent a touchdown, which held the Colts to a field goal last week. And I was watching something on the social media that Brian Baldiner was talking about with Kerry Hyder. He was pursuing Hines on that play, and him and Jamal, he was the one that managed to prevent the touchdown, tripping up Hines, which held him to the field goal. I would like to see Hyder, like you mentioned. Dude had 8.5 sacks last year with the 49ers. Hopefully Hyder can get on the sack board, like you mentioned. And Monet, he's been great on Brendan Nelson he was talking about it in his recent video that he just dropped this morning. Monet got a couple of good pressures last week. I hope Monet can get a few more pressures too, but mostly I can see him possibly being in on most of the plays to try to limit the damage of Derrick Henry. So, because we know Monet is a good run stopper too. He had a lot of good plays last week against Taylor. But man, for defensive wise, I want to see Taylor and Hyde just go after. Carlos. No, Dunlap. Fuck. What am I saying Hyde for? He's on Jacksonville. My bad, man. My bad.
Kerry Hyder, you good?
Kerry Hyder, man. So yeah, I just want to see those guys go after and just beast Tannehill, man. That's huge. Secondary. Now, we have yet to get an interception. I want to see at least, if we're going to get some pressure, I want to at least see one house call come to my end zone this week. And the guy who I think is going to get it, I would love to know personally more than to see freaking Jamal Adams get that first house call of the season, because we didn't have any pick sixes. I want to see at least one pick six this season, or a few of them. It could either be Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, I don't care. Just one of those two start it off and get it first.
Honestly, yeah, I'm thinking that Seattle's also going to get the first pick of the season. I mean, this is Seattle home opener. We all know how rowdy it gets over at Lumen Field, and so I think that Ryan Tannehill, he might throw an errant pass here or there. He might he might make a few mistakes just because of the fact that, okay, like we said, he doesn't have that chemistry with Julio, and then you have the crowd noise that's going to disrupt timing. That's going to disrupt pre-snap huddles. That's going to disrupt a whole bunch of things on that end. And so Ryan Tannehill, I could definitely see him, throwing a couple picks. His offensive line, like we said, is in disarray. And so, we could see him make a couple of mistakes. Obviously, in the last couple of years, he's been one of the more underrated quarterbacks in all of football. And so he's not as turnover prone as he once was. But, not every day you get to play in Seattle against a crowd like that. And so look for him to make a few mistakes.
Oh, we're going to be bringing it. I will be at the game getting some of our guys fired up. And I'm going to try to it's going to be tough knowing the fact that we have to wear masks in the stadium again because, Inslee is enforcing it, which is understandable because of that new Delta variant. So hopefully we can all get through it. Just everybody keep on masking up. I mean, obviously we're in two separate places, so it's okay since we're all safely at home doing this video. But now we got to get back. Let's get back to the offensive side of the ball. Now, hopefully Carson, he had a beast game last week against the Colts, except with the exception, I know it sucks he has a fumble. Now, Carson, he needs to hold on to that ball. How much, other than Carson, are you expecting to see a little bit more DJ Dallas out there, or maybe some Alex Buda Collins? I mean, what do you want to see in the running game this week for the Seahawks with the Shane Waldron offense?
I want to continue to see balance. As we saw last week, there was 23 pass attempts and there was about 20 rushes. And so it was about 50-50 in terms of pass run ratio. And I want to see the same thing. Against the Tennessee Titans defense, like we talked about, that defense is very vulnerable, both in the pass or against the pass and against the run. And so I want to see more balance. I want to see, more deep shots down the field like Russ was doing in the game against the Colts. And behind Chris Carson, we're probably going to see a little bit more Alex Collins. I thought that throughout the preseason, he actually had that number 2 job over Rashad Penny in my eyes. And here Rashad Penny is again getting injured. He's landing on short-term IR. probably not going to see him for the next 3 to 4 weeks. And so Alex Collins, he's a thumper. He's a between the tackles guy. He's a goal line type of back. We'll see more DJ Dallas if maybe we trail, but I just don't see that happening because DJ Dallas is more of a third down type of guy. He's more explosive. He's going to get the work on third down. I think that Alex Collins, like I said, he's a thumper, between the tackles type of guy. He fits our running style. He's a bruiser. And I like what I saw from him in the preseason. I think he's slowly rounding back into that 2017 form that he displayed with the Baltimore Ravens. And I would not mind at all if we were to see more carries from Alex Collins.
And hopefully more Irish step dancing for touchdown celebrations if he gets in the end zone. We don't call him Buddha for no reason. That was his nickname at Arkansas, Buddha Collins. So I always stuck with calling him Buddha. So hopefully Buddha can bring that energy and keep on doing it. I want to see at least one touchdown where he's doing his Irish step dancing workout routine that he always did. Because that's how he worked on his running game, was Irish step dancing, from what I saw in recent history too. And then, I like what you mentioned with the balanced attack. I was actually touching up on this last week when me and the Hawks Nest did our preview, and we were talking about how Green Bay did that same balanced attack, which the short plays will eventually build up the long plays, and that's exactly what we did last week against the Indianapolis Colts. And it was kind of like how the Packers were running it against the Rams in the playoffs and set up some of the long big plays, like the play to Lazard, which basically daggered that playoff game. But there is one thing that concerns me, though, and I don't like that we're going for the long ball on 3rd and short. Preferably, I would rather prefer a short dump off to one of the tight ends like Everett or Disley when it's like 3rd and short. We don't have to go for the long ball every time on 3rd and short. Just keep the drives alive. That's what I want to see us do more. It's just, I want to see us die down on the long balls on 3rd and short, because we did a little bit. Russell Wilson went back to that. If we can just die those down and just keep more drives alive, it gives us a better chance to put up more points on the board. So that's what I want to see this week too. Just die down on going for the deep ball on 3rd and short. Just get the quick play to the tight end or any wide open receiver that has enough open lanes to get the first down. Just keep the drive alive.
I get what you're saying, Sam Dog, but I feel like if the shots are there, why not take them?
Well,
I mean, like we talked about, Tennessee's defense is very vulnerable. I'm not too confident outside of Kevin Bayard. He's one of the better safeties in all of football, but I'm not too confident in that cornerback room. I think that DK and Tyler, they're going to have a lot of space, a lot of room to work with. And if the shots are there, I mean, this team is built off of explosive plays.
Yeah,
and
take it to the shots there. Take it to the shots there. I will agree with that. If the shot's there, take it. But most of the time, if it's not there, just do the short balance play, because the short plays will eventually build up the deep ball plays. That's something me and my dad always talk up on too. But I get the
no
point.
doubt.
But if the shot's there, if the shot is there, even if it's 3rd and short and the shot's there, take it if you feel like you need to. But most of the time, just keep the drive alive. And if we get those deep shots, even on 1st and 2nd down, then we can still do more of that too. That's just one of my thoughts though. But I get what you're saying. I get exactly what you're saying.
No doubt.
All right. Did we pretty much touch up on everything that we needed to, or is there one more thing you might want to add into this?
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a few injuries that the Seahawks are dealing with. Obviously, a wide receiver, Penny Hart, Dwayne Eskridge, both coming off concussions. We don't know if they're going to play. And so if they're not going to play, Seattle's going to be pretty thin at wide receiver. Now, Seattle can call up a Kay Johnson, a Cody Thompson, Aaron Fuller from the practice squad. I think right now, or Connor Weddington, right now, it'd probably be a stretch to say that, we could bring in an outside free agent, like maybe a Golden Tate, just because those guys aren't going to miss too much time. And so I don't think there's a need to bring in an outside free agent. But as far as, having to call up a guy or two from the practice squad, I think that's probably going to be necessary. Seattle is pretty thin at wide receiver on the depth chart behind DK, Freddie Swain, and Tyler Lockett. So that is something to monitor. But I'm not too worried about it. It's just, I thought it was just something.
Yeah, it sucks that D. Eskridge got the concussion. I mean, he didn't have to take the extra hit on that jet sweep, and I wanted to see some more of him on those jet sweeps. And I heard Penny Hart has been practicing, so there's a positive on that. Anish has been monitoring some of what's been going on during the week, sending me texts of some of the tweets from like guys like Brady Henderson or Corbin Smith or Jake Heaps, some of those insider guys with the Seahawks. So hopefully Hart can make it back. I know Penny Hart can run pretty good on the jet sweeps, and D. Eskridge, if he's going to be out this week, that's understandable. He had the concussion, so rest him up, get him ready for the next week. But if there's any receiver I kind of would like to see brought up, I'd like to see Kay Johnson, so that way we can get him in the slot too. But then again, you also got to remember, we still have Freddie Swain. We still got Fast Freddie coming up in the slot too. I would like to see Freddie Swain get some action in the slot in this coming game too.
No doubt. Freddie Swain, I think that he still has a lot of hidden abilities, latent potential that's yet to be unleashed. And I do like him in the slot. I do like him deep. I thought he showed flashes last season. And, this is going to be an opportunity for him to really step up into that role and see if he can become that number 3 receiver for the Seattle Seahawks.
And it's not every day that you get to say that you scored your very first NFL career touchdown against the Bill Belichick defense, which is what Freddie Swain did in week 2 last year in our house. First career touchdown against a Bill Belichick defense. Not a bad start to start off an NFL career.
Of course. And now, like we saw last week against the Patriots, the Miami Dolphins, Jalen Waddle did the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Jalen Waddle did the same thing. You are absolutely right on that, my friend. Ooh, but yeah, if Cade Johnson gets brought up, let's get him some opportunities. And if they decide later on, if Connor Weddington is ready, since they brought him back to practice squad, he's a 253 guy from Sumner, Washington, played his high school ball at Sumner, 253 represent. He does it like this to me. That's how he did it last time I saw him at the preseason game, because he's a Sumner kid who played at Stanford. He might get his chance on special teams later on. Mm-hmm. But anything else?
I think that should about do it.
All right.
I think we touched on everything.
All right. Just always like to be sure we touch on everything. Once again, if you guys haven't subscribed yet to Steezy A Smith, make sure you go over. I'll make sure to put his link in the description to his channel, Steezy A Smith. Make sure you sub him up, man. He's usually on the round table with the AZ Sports fans and CG Ruthless Sports and John, the other Rams fan. He was just on there a couple of days ago. I tuned in for a little bit. Granted, the stream was just about over, but other than that, also, if you haven't yet on my channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and hopefully I'll be back next week, hopefully with game picks with my buddy Dallas on Tuesdays, and then you know the rest. So anyway, Steezy, once again, thank you for coming on and doing this, bro.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on, brother.
Hopefully
have a good one, y'all.
Hopefully we get more coming, and you know how it usually goes. Sam Dog Infamous 253, Steezy signing out. If you ain't with it, you ain't infamous. As always, go Seahawks.
Go Hawks.